The Chinese Room is a developer most famously known for cementing the place of the genre unknowingly called the walking simulator in the gaming industry and community with its mod and eventual full release of Dear Esther. They had since collaborated on Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, but of course collaboration on a horror game doesn't really feel like a logical follow-up to the foundational exploration narrative game. We got that a little later, with the release of Everybody's Gone to the Rapture in 2015. Released on the PS4 and eventually ported to the PC, the game places you in a small English village where some kind of event has made everyone disappear. You explore the village under the guidance of a bright light that leads you through the town and manifests various events in this mysterious apocalypse, so you can see how it happened and what the villagers were struggling with as this all unfolded. The game is separated into chapters, each focusing on a different character, and thus the events aren't necessarily shown in order. It takes some exploration and thought to really piece together what you're being shown. What makes the game so interesting to me on kind of a meta level is that it's a new product by the creators of the original walking simulator, but after years of expansion and experimentation on the part of other developers. Dear Esther wasn't the first of its kind, but it was the first to really break through into mainstream attention, and if you ask your average gamer to name a few games of the genre, they likely won't remember any before it. But since Dear Esther, the genre has expanded and evolved in a number of ways because of the work of other developers trying new things with it. More specifically, walking simulators have gotten more interactive. And now the Chinese Room comes back around to try their hands at something they helped create, but that isn't really theirs anymore. Now you may have caught on that I hate the term walking simulator. It's an intentionally reductive and derisive term designed specifically to judge the game based on how its mode of interaction differs from traditional video games rather than its content or experiential nature. But I won't deny that the genre has become increasingly interactive since Dear Esther's relatively passive experience. Games like Gone Home, Tacoma, and Firewatch have built minor interactive elements around the core concepts of peaceful exploration to essentially turn the genre into something of a narrative puzzle game, where the goal is not to solve riddles to continue through the game, but to explore and pay attention to try and piece together a story. That is pretty squarely where Everybody's Gone to the Rapture fits in, and when it's at its best, it's a really effective example of it. Like most games at its genre, you can't die or lose or fail, and there's no such thing as a game over. Your role in the game is to explore this village, see all these little stories being told, and try to come to an understanding of the bigger picture of what happened. Oftentimes, it's a very compelling experience. There are a lot of characters who all have different roles in this strange apocalypse, and I found piecing it together over the course of the game to be rather satisfying. It's got plenty of moments where a character reveals new information that recontextualizes how I saw something earlier, or helps lodge a giant piece of the puzzle into place. And those moments are always very interesting and satisfying. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture is an open world game, to the point where you could literally walk straight to the side of the last event right from the beginning. But there needs to be some kind of structure, of course, which is accomplished by the light that guides you around the town, and it's both one of the best and worst things about Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. At its best, the game feels like one of the most smoothly flowing exploration games I've ever played. I'd follow the light to the next event it wanted to show me, then I'd notice something that looked interesting off to the side, so I'd deviate from the path, find something the light hadn't explicitly tried to lead me to, and when I had explored it all, I'd return to the path and, in due time, see the light flickering in the distance and go to join it again. It's a great form of player guidance in that it actually feels alive. Like it's some kind of force that actively wants to show you something, but isn't completely beholden to your will and actions. It flits in and out of your presence, always leading you somewhere else, but never depending on your cooperation. This is improved even further by the way its behavior changes in each chapter. It can be fairly subtle, but the light seems to take on characteristics of the subject of a given chapter in how it moves, and in one important case, how it looks too. It really just takes something that could easily be an obnoxious and on-the-nose hand-holding tool and turns it instead into a dynamic guide that doesn't constrain your actions. But it can also be a source of frustration at times. Depending on your playstyle, it could take a while to really adjust to the flow of the game. If your approach is too free-spirited, you could wind up wasting a ton of time wandering aimlessly, but you're obviously expected to explore a bit, and following the light around without ever deviating would not only cause you to miss out on notable chunks of the experience, but might not even really be possible. Like I said, it feels more like a living being who wants to show you something than a waypoint pointing toward your next objective, and while that's usually a welcome aspect of the game's structure and exploration, it can occasionally just become kind of obtuse. I even had a few instances where it ended up stuck in place and never moved until I left the vicinity entirely and came across it again further on. I'm still not actually sure if that was a glitch or if it was intentionally stopping to imply I had more to see in that area, but it completely broke that otherwise very impressive and immersive flow of exploration. At its best, exploring Shropshire is a natural and freeform experience with a guide that showed enough personality and malleability not to feel railroaded. At its worst, it could be a frustrating experience that leaves you wandering with no direction, which tends to produce a rather unfavorable ratio of time spent to story experienced. This can be exacerbated by the fact that the walking speed in this game is incredibly slow. That's not as bad a thing as it sounds. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture absolutely wants the player to take the time to appreciate the beauty of the scenery and think about the things they're experiencing, and allowing the player to zip through like it's the Green Hill Zone would obviously not be conducive to the game's goals. And you can move a bit faster, but only in outdoor environments, and it still isn't very fast at all. In the game's more atmospheric moments, which, as we'll get to in a second, are most of them, the game's slow pace is actually quite welcome. But when you're trying to go back toward an area you've already been, or just wandering an area trying to see if you missed anything, it starts to feel like the game is wasting your time. Like I said, definitely a mixed bag here. It's something I can very much appreciate, but also can't help but feel could have been balanced a little better. Unsurprisingly, one area in which Everybody's Gone to the Rapture shines is in its visuals and atmosphere. This little English burg is absolutely beautiful to look at, and the lighting in particular is rather gorgeous. Dark places are actually dark, and I love the way shadows dance in the movement of the guiding light. If you're into scenery porn, this is definitely one of your better options, but there's more to it than just the visual beauty. The design of the village shares a good portion of the credit for the game's immersive feel. Specifically, this apocalypse wasn't a violent one. Aside from a few symptoms and events leading up to it, what most of it comes down to is people got sorta sick, then disappeared. The title is an allusion to the Rapture, a popular Christian interpretation of Revelation that includes God taking Christians to be with him in the blink of an eye. And much like fictional portrayals of that event, this town mostly looks like nothing happened. Like everyone just disappeared in the middle of their daily lives. It effectively makes for a subtly creepy atmosphere while never going quite fully into feeling like a tense or suspenseful experience. And in the most poignant moments of the story, the game can be downright beautiful. This is helped by Jessica Curry's wonderful musical score, which dramatically accompanies most major moments of the game with a beautiful mix of sweeping orchestral tracks and choral hymns. I can't really go into the moments that worked the most for me in this way because spoilers, but the game manages a number of emotional and somber moments that come together with such weight and beauty. When this game is on, it's on. And ultimately what we get is a fascinating story pieced together from a bunch of disparate perspectives to show us the power and importance of human connection. Each of the characters has their own struggles, but as the game eventually suggests through all of its facets, this isn't a tragedy of apocalypse, but a tragedy of our failure to connect, to touch, to love. And while it's got its fair share of frustrations, it effectively communicates that point while feeling mostly like a smoothly operating and gently guided exploration of this small town, the disaster that whisked away its populace, and the struggles we all go through with the people closest to us. So overall, in Games as Lit 101, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture gets a B, and a recommendation to anyone who feels like a nice, slow exploration of beautiful countryside and a meaningful story.